Hey there, Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement and bringing you another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, and remembering to turn my light on so that there's actually halfway decent lighting here, and I really mean that halfway, like 50% decent lighting. Anyway, welcome to another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training, where I take a concept, strategy, something that we do in our autism fitness training curriculum for the ASD and neurodivergent population, and bring it to you so that you can optimize your fitness or adapted physical education programs wherever you are in the world. And speaking of wherever you are in the world, if you are ready to become an Autism Fitness Certified Pro, you can learn all about that journey on autismfitness.com. There's a link somewhere down there below. It's down in the text, but you could just go to autismfitness.com and learn all about the certification, but not before, or you can pause this and go before. But anyway, for the sake of what I'm saying right now, not before I tell you all about today's theme, which is setting up the athlete for success via demonstrating the exercise. Something that's really important and something that is easy to miss when you are working with an athlete for the first time, or you are showing them a new exercise for the first time. And the reason that I chose this topic today is I was just leading one of the Autism Fitness Certification days, our full day practical, and I noted that this is something that really needs to be covered in depth, is the how to, meaning how do we demonstrate for an athlete what an exercise is supposed to look like. Now, the first thing is we have three distinct levels of any exercise. We have our standard, which means that is what the exercise is supposed to look and be performed like. And then, of course, we have performance standards with respect to sets and reps, total volume, that sort of thing. As far as the actual technique of the exercise, when the athlete is performing the movement with appropriate strength and stability and range of motion, the three big important factors in getting the most benefit out of any exercise, then great, 100%, gold medal. The exercise is doing what it needs to do for the athlete, because the athlete is capable, very important, capable of performing that exercise, right? But not every athlete, particularly our autism and neurodivergent life skill athletes, because of a variety of reasons, are going to be able to perform each and every exercise at standard. And I've had parents and professionals who remark to me, oh, I don't think they're going to be able to do this, or I don't think that my kids or my teens or my adults are going to be able to do these exercises to standard. Totally fine. Most of the athletes that I've had historically are not able to complete each exercise to standard. However, we know that at that point at which an individual can perform that exercise independently without any compensatory movement, is going to be the point at which the exercise has the most functionality and the most carryover benefit, meaning that it's generalizing to activities of daily living. And we can look at the squat, we can look at the overhead press, we can look at the band row, the band pull down, the carry, farmer's walk. We can even look at sled pushes and sled drags with respect to this. We can even go into our power exercises with the medicine balls in the curriculum, right? So it doesn't mean that the athlete, number one, has to be able to perform the exercise at standard from the very beginning. And it also doesn't mean that the athlete is not going to derive some benefit from each and every exercise, even if they cannot yet perform the exercise to standard. So that's, I think, enough about standard to begin with as an introduction. So we have standard of the exercise, what it's supposed to look like when it's being performed properly. Then we have our modification. How do we provide additional structure or support around each exercise as it is needed by the athlete. So when the athlete cannot complete that squat because either a physiological inhibition or from the neuromotor pathway, they're just not making that connection. That could be more of an issue or a complication on the cognitive end of things or the neuromuscular end of things. And then what do we do? We need to have some type of simplified variation of that exercise without taking away from what that exercise is supposed to be. Meaning, we're not going to implement some type of corrective exercise in order for the athlete to find depth in a squat. We're going to give them a box or a platform or a bench and maybe a band for upper body support. These are all things that we have in the curriculum because we want to support the athlete safely and with stability going through that as full a range of motion as they have. Again, really important. Then on the other side, so once an athlete meets standard, they can perform that exercise technically sound with appropriate range of motion, stability, motor control. Then we have progressions, right? We can increase the weight, we can increase repetitions, we can increase total sets. In some cases, we can do a unilateral or a single arm, single leg variation of an exercise. Great. Progression should be the easiest thing here. But when we are introducing an exercise, particularly in one of those first 1, 2, 3 sessions with a new athlete, and the expectations are not yet really well defined, the onus is on us as the coach, as the teacher, as the practitioner, whatever your title is, person introducing and teaching exercise and movement. The onus is on us to demonstrate that exercise at the standard level. And this is why it's so important to be able to practice each exercise. And it doesn't mean you need to be able to press 50 pounds in each hand overhead, but to be able to perform the movement pattern so that you can give the athlete an appropriate and clear visual representation of what that movement is supposed to look like. And we want to use this both on the front end when we are first introducing a new exercise, and oftentimes as a prompt while the athlete is performing the exercise, if we're going to mirror this for them and demonstrate it while they're performing the exercise so they have a much better idea and they can work off of what we are doing and copy it, also known as motor imitation. That is going to be quite helpful towards the purpose and the outcome of the athlete, number one, understanding what the expectation for performing that exercise is. Number two, getting reinforcement where they need it when they are doing it correctly. And number three, also coming into contact with the correct performance. And I say correct because they're doing as best as they can physically with that particular exercise. So in autism fitness programming, we have a practice, and it becomes a mantra of label, demo, do, and cue. That's something you get as an Autism Fitness Certified Pro. We go into that in depth and practice it in the curriculum. When you are first introducing a movement, and this could be anything, it could be an overhead press, it could be a push-up, it could be a squat, it could be kicking a ball, it could be a golf swing. I think one of the mistakes that is often made is rushing through that exercise or rushing through that movement and not demonstrating it enough for that athlete to get a sense of what it needs to look like. So for example, when we are teaching a standing band row or a cable row, what I will do is I will introduce the exercise. Again, I'm going to label it. So, all right, band rows, I'm going to go first. This is actually the language that I use with my athletes. I'll go first. Let me show you. I'm going to do 5 reps. I'm going to do 6 reps. And then I demonstrate the exercise at standard level. I may go a little bit slower than I would typically perform that exercise, because I want the athlete, again, to have a clear and defined visual representation to commit to memory and then later to practice of that particular exercise. So I want to make sure that I am setting up my feet in a rooted position, that I'm setting up my posture, that I'm setting up my grip, all of the little big things that will make a difference in the outcome of that exercise. I want to make sure I'm doing those. And if I am capturing my athlete's attention all the way through for all 6 repetitions, great. Sometimes we have an athlete who is going to get either distracted or disengaged from our demonstration, which is all right. It's okay if we're demonstrating this exercise over and over and over for the athlete, because we want them to be as educated and we want to provide as much coaching in that moment that is necessary for them, again, to develop a working knowledge of this exercise. Now, none of this really matters in as much as telling us how much information the athlete has acquired until they actually perform the exercise. So the way that I'll do this is I'll demonstrate that band row, and then the athlete will take the band handles, or I'll hand them over to the athlete, and the athlete will start performing that band row. One of a few things can happen. That athlete can perform that band row absolutely pristinely, and they are able to take what I've shown them and do a perfect motor imitation with great range of motion, powerful concentric, a great slow controlled eccentric. Fantastic. That is less typically the case. We have an athlete who then takes the bands and does what we call an approximation of the exercise. So even though they saw me do the exercise, they do not yet have a real, what we would call, feel or muscle memory for that exercise. And how could they if they've never done it before? So from there, I may demonstrate the exercise again, a second or a third time again, especially if it's in that first session. And that response from the athlete, once they do the exercise, that band row, for the second set or third set, now I'm developing a much clearer idea of how they're interpreting my demonstrating that band row. So our understanding of our athletes' capabilities right there are probably not going to be fully formed, nor should they be, in that first set. I might get a good idea of how they're interpreting that band row, but it's definitely not something that's absolute, because if I go back for a second set and now the athlete is slowing down and I'm providing behavior-specific praise and I'm giving adequate feedback and not overcoaching them, and they're starting to slow down and get that movement much closer to what I was demonstrating, okay, we're not on a really good track here. Again, that's not always necessarily the initial outcome from the athlete, but the key here is that we always want to demonstrate the exercise for the athlete first, and never make the assumption that, number one, the athlete has done anything like this before, because it's seldom the case, at least in my experience, that any of my athletes have prior experience with strength and fitness training. And even if they did, I don't know how they were coached or who coached them or what exercises were coached. So I really have to take it upon myself to approach it as though this is entirely new, and it's not necessarily automatically reinforcing and meaningful for my athlete. That's my job as a coach, to make it reinforcing and meaningful, and first and foremost to demonstrate the exercise in a way that they can motor imitate. Even if it's not perfect, we always need a baseline and we always need a starting point. So the key takeaway here is demonstrate that exercise first, and don't just breeze through it. We want to give our athletes adequate processing time so they can perform the exercise to the best of their current capability. That's going to give us a lot more information about what they need as far as the support, if we're going to modify that exercise, whether they can currently meet the standard, and awesome, now we can start progressing the program. And whichever it is, it's fine. But we have to know what's going on with the athlete as far as their performance and ability to follow our direction with that demonstration of the exercise. So that's why we need to practice. And it's a lot easier to teach something that you love. So with fitness and with movement, it's probably a good idea to practice all of these exercises in order to deliver them in a coaching capacity to our athletes. I don't know, just a thought. And that's why demonstration is so absolutely critical to any and all programming, whether it's individuals or groups, because you're always teaching the individual in the group and not rushing through it, taking your time to demonstrate the exercise for the athlete. I hope this has been helpful for you. I'd love to know what you think. Leave a comment in the comments section below. If there's a topic that you'd love me to cover in the future, leave that in the comments section also. Before you go, like, subscribe, and thank you again for watching this edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday Training. I'm Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement. If you are ready to become an Autism Fitness Certified Pro, link is down there, or you can head over to autismfitness.com. We certify people worldwide. You take your online course and then meet me either in person or virtually for your full day hands-on practical. And you can understand why hands-on is so important, because if you're learning how to demonstrate, you should know the exercises inside and out. Thanks for watching.